we just gotta look at Rafa's full entire skill trees, and I gotta say, they are freaking massive. The Borderlands 4 Vault Hunters have over 100 skills, so let's not burn too much time and jump right into it. We have a lot to go over. Before we do though, I do want to give a big thanks to 2K for allowing me to look at the skill trees early, and allowing me to share all this cool information with you guys. First off, every Vault Hunter has a passive trait, and Rafa's is known as Overdrive. Whenever Rafa activates an action skill, he enters Overdrive. When an action skill is active, Overdrive's duration does not decrease. While Overdrive is active, can increase movement speed and deal increased damage with all sources. Damage 10%, movement speed 25%, duration 12 seconds. Alright, let's start with the green tree because that is the most interesting tree for me. And this is going to be your melee tree with your melee action skill. For the first action skill, we have Arc Knives. Rafa puts down his guns and equips his Arc Knives, blades that deal melee damage and mark enemies whenever they damage them, causing them to take increased damage for every mark on them. Now, I do want to mention I am playing on PC, so I am going to read the PC controls as the inputs, but if you play on console or controller, just know it will be a different button. Anyways, left click will perform a melee attack with Rafa's Arc Knives, right click will dash forward and perform a shock melee attack. And if you press F, or the action skill button, you will unleash Rafa's Blade Fury, which deals shock damage to all marked enemies and ends the skill. Now, I'm not going to read all the numbers at the bottom, but if you want to read those, you can pause the video. But those numbers are going to show like the duration of things and like how much damage you will do. Alright, onto the first skill, we have Handshake Deal. Rafa gains increased gun damage and melee damage. Midnight Oil. Rafa's action skill deals bonus corrosive damage. The longer the skill has been active, the greater the bonus damage. Expedite. Overdrive skill. So remember, this is your passive you have at all times, the first skill we talked about on the left side. So Overdrive grants Rafa further increased movement speed. Next up, we have Dial In. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy with a melee attack, his melee damage gains critical hit chance. This chance stacks and all stacks are removed when Rafa critically hits an enemy. Alright, so for the first augment, we have Altered Cabron. By the way, in the game, Rafa does speak a little Spanish, so they decided to name a couple of skills off of a Spanish name. And as for what augments are, if you play Borderlands 3, you might be familiar. If you look at this skill, you can see it has an octagonal shape, and on the left side, you have a lock slot for that same octagonal shape. For your build, you can only have on one augment and one capstone, so you can see the bottom part of the skill tree has the triangular shapes. So when you get far enough in your tree, you can select one of each and create your builds. Anyways, Altered Cabron, sorry if I'm butchering names by the way. Whenever Rafa kills enemies while Arc Knives is active, restore a portion of his maximum health capacity. Whenever Rafa gains health, deal bonus corrosive damage with all attacks, and gain increased movement speed. This effect stacks. El Corazon. A portion of Rafa's maximum health capacity is converted into maximum shield capacity. For the second augment, we have Dead Man Walking. Arc Knives does not end when its duration runs out. Instead, it only ends if Rafa enters Fight for Your Life or activates Blade Fury. While Arc Knives' duration is depleted, Rafa loses health instead. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy, he gains Overshield. Now, Overshield is a new mechanic in Borderlands 4, and what this is shield on top of your shield. So imagine your shield says, 600 capacity and is completely full. Overshield can bring it up to like 700 capacity, 800 capacity, and you will see a lighter color bar overlap the current shield bar. But yeah, all you need to know is that Overshield is giving you even more shield. Next up, we have Diamond Hands. Dealing melee damage grants Rafa a stack of Diamond Hands. Can increase gun damage for every stack of Diamond Hands. Once Rafa deals gun damage, stacks begin to decay quickly until they run out. Soldar. Rafa's melee critical hits gain lifesteal. So it does seem like all the Vault Hunters thus far have like some form of lifesteal, and I am wondering how this will scale for endgame. In the zone, this is a kill skill. Killing an enemy freezes Overdrive's duration. To the last, Rafa gains increased gun damage and increased skill damage. The lower his health, the greater the bonus. And finally, for the top tree before we branch off, we have Hard Sell. Whenever Rafa's shield breaks, he instantly gains a portion of his shield maximum capacity as Overshield. This skill cannot be used again until Rafa activates his action skill. Okay, moving down to the left branch, we have Blowout. Whenever Rafa applies a heavy arms mark or critically hits an enemy with his action skill, they explode in corrosive lava projectiles. The longer Rafa's action skill has been active, the more corrosive projectiles are spawned. Thundercutter. This is our third augment. Arc Knife attacks deal shock melee splash damage. Rafa deals increased splash damage. El Paraguas. Rafa gains increased splash damage and increased splash damage critical hit chance. Protecto Pulse. Pressing right click while Arc Knives are active or Rafa retriggers his action skill drains a portion of Rafa's shields and deals that much shock damage to nearby enemies. Shock Market. Whenever Rafa deals splash damage, deal bonus shock damage based on the damage dealt. Liquidation. Marked enemies killed by Rafa leave behind a corrosive hazard. And for the first capstone, we have Huracan is special. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying, I don't speak Spanish. Activating Blade Fury causes Rafa to spin his blades, creating a singularity that draws in all marked enemies and other nearby enemies while dealing continuous shock damage. Whenever this attack kills an enemy, Overdrive grants increased action skill cooldown rate. Alright, now for the middle branch, we have Artilleria. Rafa gains increased ordnance cooldown rate. And in case you're wondering, ordnance is your launcher grenade spot in your inventory. And yeah, in this game, launchers and grenades have a cooldown and a specific duration. So this skill will definitely help the cooldown for that. For the fourth augment, we have Parting Gift. Whenever Rafa activates his dash attack, he leaves behind a grenade. If he has a grenade equipped, use that grenade instead. Enemies damaged by these grenades become marked. Whenever Rafa applies a mark to an enemy, apply an additional mark. Collaborate Ignition. Overdrive skill, Rafa deals bonus damage of his weapon's element with all skill and ordnance while overdrive is active. Booming Business, whenever Rafa critically hits an enemy, he gains a chance to spawn a free grenade. If Rafa has a grenade equipped, spawn a grenade based on that. Synergia, whenever Rafa deals ordnance damage, he also deals increased gun damage and melee damage. This affects stacks. Demolitions, overdrive skill, while overdrive is active, Rafa may use his grenades while cooling down, at the cost of health. Every time a grenade is used this way, it costs more health until Rafa's grenade fully cools down. For the second capstone, we have Inferno Protocol. While arc knives are active, Rafa's exosuit stores all damage dealt to him. The exosuit then heats up and constantly deals a small amount of fire damage to him. Additionally, Rafa's melee attacks deal bonus fire damage. A portion of all damage dealt to Rafa is also dealt to enemies he has marked. Using Blade Fury causes Rafa to consume all stored damage, and deals bonus fire damage based on stored damage. A portion of all damage dealt this way is returned to Rafa as health. El Diablito. A portion of all fire damage Rafa deals also deals bonus fire ordnance damage. El Barrancho. Rafa deals increased corrosive damage while his action skill is active. The longer it has been active, the greater the bonus. For our fifth and final augment for the green tree, we have Acid Drop. Arc Knives dash attack is replaced by Caustic Leap. Pressing right click causes Rafa to leap forward and create a caustic hazard wherever he lands. Whenever a mark is removed from an enemy, it explodes in a corrosive nova. Empuje, Rafa gains increased action skill duration. Sustainable Energy, overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased health regeneration based on how much overdrive time is remaining. Motivar, pressing right click during arc knives grants increased overdrive duration. This bonus is reset whenever Rafa activates an action skill. For the third and final capstone for green tree, we have Galvanic Panic. Whenever Rafa performs a melee attack while arc knives is active, fire an acid storm glider at the enemy in his view. Acid storm gliders deal corrosive splash damage based on the number of total marked enemies. Additionally, killing an enemy while arc knives is active restores action skill duration. Activating Blade Fury causes Rafa to fire a volley of acid storm gliders in front of him and end arc knives. For the final skill in green tree, we have Cruel Accrual. Rafa gains increased skill damage with all skills. The longer his action skill has been active, the greater the bonus. That's it for green tree, so let's go ahead and move on to blue tree. For the blue tree, our action skill is called Apophis Lance, and this is going to be that left-handed gun you've seen in some of the trailers. Equip Rafa's Apophis Lance, an offhand arm cannon that decreases Rafa's gun handling, but allows him to fire piercing shock ordnance blasts. Any unused charges when Apophis Lance ends are converted into action skill cooldown. Press right click to fire a piercing shock ordnance blast to enemies and consume a charge. Or hold right click to charge Rafa's Apophis Lance for increased damage, projectile size, and projectile speed, at the cost of more charges. For the first skill, we have Rent. Rafa gains increased reload speed. Las Haras. Overdrive skill, Rafa regenerates ammo while overdrive is active. The Thrill. Another overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased fire rate. Gain further increased fire rate while overdrive is active. Preparado. Whenever Rafa reloads his current gun, he gains increased action skill cooldown rate. This affects stacks. For the first augment in blue tree, we have Sangre por Sangre. Whenever Rafa consumes a charge, he gains increased action skill cooldown rate. This bonus is increased for every charge consumed. Pa Dentro. Activating an action skill grants Rafa health regeneration. For our second augment, we have Battery Subscription Service. Apophis Lance gains an additional charge. Additionally, whenever Rafa consumes 4 or more charges, gain increased action skill potency. Now, I do want to bring up I'm not 100% sure what they mean by action skill potency. By the wording, it sounds like action skill damage, but why is it not labeled like action skill damage like other skills? I don't know, we'll have to figure out more on that. Ariba. Kill skill, whenever Rafa kills an enemy, he gains increased ordnance cooldown rate. First impression. The first shot fired from a fully loaded weapon magazine gains increased damage. Al Centro. Overdrive skill. Rafa gains increased weapon handling with all weapons and action skills while overdrive is active. The longer overdrive has been active, the greater the bonus. Metal Management. Whenever Rafa activates or retriggers an action skill, his gun consumes no ammo. Abajo. Whenever Rafa throws a grenade, he gains increased action skill cooldown rate. Branching down to the left tree, we have Brain Dump. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased critical hit chance with his guns while overdrive is active. For the third augment, we have Ojo Rojo. Apophis Lance gains critical hit chance. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy with Apophis Lance, gain further increased critical hit chance. Conductivo. Rafa gains increased status effect chance, and also gains further increased shock chance. El Catrin. After sliding, Rafa's action skill deals bonus shock damage, and he deals increased critical hit damage. Aw. Whenever Rafa shocks an enemy, all shots fired at the enemy are critical hits. For the first capstone, we have Project Raiju. Apophis Lance's weapon is replaced with a close-range shock taser burst. Pressing and holding causes Rafa to deal shock damage all around him. The longer Rafa holds this attack, the greater the damage it deals. Fiesta. Whenever Rafa applies a status effect, his action skill consumes no duration, and Apophis Lance consumes no charges. Going into the middle branch, we have Drone Defense. Whenever Rafa activates an ordnance, spawn storm gliders that hover near him. As he takes damage, transfer some of the damage to his storm gliders. Once a storm glider receives too much damage, it explodes, dealing corrosive splash damage to nearby enemies. For the fourth augment, we have Give a Struck module. Whenever Rafa kills an enemy with his Apophis Lance, spawn a free grenade on that enemy. If Rafa has a grenade equipped, spawn a copy of that grenade instead. El Soldado. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased gun damage while Overdrive is active. This bonus is doubled while Rafa is charging Apophis Lance. The right tools. Rafa gains increased ordnance damage after reloading his gun. This bonus stacks. Detonation. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy with an action skill, place a remote detonator on that enemy. Ordnance Overdrive, detonate all remote detonators. Remote detonators gain increased damage and increased splash radius for every remote detonation. Drone Assault. Whenever Rafa activates or retriggers an action skill, send one of his storm gliders at an enemy in his view. Once it arrives, it explodes into a corrosive explosion equal to his remaining health. And for the second capstone, we have Project Basilisk. Apophis Lance now fires a corrosive blob that leaves a corrosive hazard and splits into several smaller projectiles whenever it detonates. The more charges that Apophis Lance consumes at once, the more it splits. For the right branch, we have Jock. Whenever Rafa damages an enemy with a skill, he gains a stack of Jock. For every stack of Jock, he gains increased Overdrive bonuses. Whenever Overdrive ends, lose all stacks. For the fifth and final augment for Blue Tree, we have Engorge Boar. Apophis Lance gains increased projectile size, projectile speed, and increased number of chains. La Garza. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased weapon handling with weapons and action skills while Overdrive is active. Mate. Whenever Overdrive ends, convert all Jock stacks into Mate stacks. Gain increased action skill cooldown rate for every stack of Mate. Once Rafa's action skill is readied, lose all stacks of Mate. Deadline. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased fire rate and increased reload speed while Overdrive is active. For the third and final capstone, we have Project Gorgon. Apophis Lance's weapon is replaced with an incendiary laser that pierces enemies. Pressing and holding right click causes the laser to deal increased damage and chain more enemies as it consumes charges. And for the final skill, we have Permalast. Whenever Rafa deals damage with an action skill to an enemy, he gains a chance to deal that damage again. That's it for the blue tree, so let's go ahead and jump into the red tree. For the red tree action skill, we have Peacebreaker Cannons. Equip Rafa's Peacebreaker Cannons, which automatically fires at enemies in Rafa's crosshairs, dealing kinetic gun damage. And in case you're not familiar, kinetic is referring to non-elemental damage. If that enemy dies or you press the middle mouse click, the Peacebreaker Cannons find a new target. Holding F ends Peacebreaker Cannons and refunds a portion of the remaining action skill duration as action skill cooldown. Alright, for the first skill, we have City Art. Rafa gains increased gun damage. Deft Hands. Rafa and his Peacebreaker Cannons gain increased fire rate. Shield Barriest. Overdrive skill. Rafa gains increased shield recharge rate and improved shield regen delay while Overdrive is active. Huerga. Whenever Rafa critically hits an enemy, action skill duration is restored. For the first augment in Red Tree, we have Incinto. Rafa's Peacebreaker Cannons gain increased critical hit chance. Pressing F while Peacebreaker Cannons are active causes them to double their critical hit chance and gain increased critical hit damage, while also causing his action skill duration to drain faster. Kill skill, killing an enemy causes Rafa to regain action skill duration, while also causing his action skill duration to drain faster. Field Repairs. Whenever Rafa activates an action skill, restore a portion of his maximum shield capacity. If his shields are already full, gain overshield instead. For the second augment, we have Bullet Buddy Deluxe. While Peacebreaker Cannons are active, Rafa and his allies regenerate ammo. Rafa's Peacebreaker Cannons deal bonus fire damage based on how full his gun is, and his turrets shoot exploding bullets while his magazine is full. Pressing F while Peacebreaker Cannons are active causes Rafa's shots to consume no ammo, but causes action skill duration to drain faster. See ya. Kill skill, killing an enemy restores shields based on Rafa's maximum health capacity. Resiliencia. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased damage reduction while Overdrive is active. Maestro. Rafa gains increased skill damage. Venganza. Whenever Rafa's shields break after being fully recharged, spawn a free grenade. If he has a grenade equipped, use that grenade instead. El Valiente. Rafa deals increased damage from all sources. The fuller Rafa's shields are, the greater the bonus. While Rafa's shields are at maximum capacity, double the bonus. Okay, moving down to the lower left branch, we have our third augment, and this is Hell in a Shell. Pressing F while Peacebreaker Cannons are active causes them to fire 2 large firebombs that deal fire damage to a large area. Killing enemies reduces this skill's cooldown. Asymmetric Warfare. Indirect projectiles gain increased damage. Indirect projectiles include all action skill weapons, thrown weapons, and projectiles not fired from your gun. Errant Spark. All indirect projectiles deal bonus fire damage. If the indirect projectile already deals fire damage, double the bonus damage. Hearted. Rafa's indirect projectiles gain lifesteal. Rolling Stone. While moving, shots have a chance to bounce off of Rafa. This chance is doubled while sliding. Proprietary Incendiary. Melee Override. Press and hold B to lob a storm glider at an enemy. Once it reaches its targets, it explodes and deals fire splash damage based on the amount of ammo in Rafa's gun when he threw the storm glider. For the first capstone in Red Tree, we have double auto shot. Rafa's Peacebreaker cannon weapons are replaced with shotguns that deal increased damage and have increased pellet count. Additionally, Rafa's turrets gain a chance to ricochet off targets. Ricochets deal reduced damage, and critical hits always ricochet. Lateral Planking. Rafa's indirect projectiles gain a chance to ricochet. Now for the middle branch, we have Confetti. Rafa's ordinances deal bonus damage in his current weapon's element. For the fourth augment, we have Insta-4 Battle System. Rafa's Peacebreaker cannons also deal ordnance damage, and he deals increased ordnance damage while Peacebreaker cannons are active. Pressing up while Peacebreaker cannons are active causes them to disconnect from Rafa and become a turret companion that begins firing at enemies in place. Additionally, it will occasionally fire grenades at its targets. If Rafa has a grenade equipped, it copies that grenade. Pressing up again returns the turret companion to Rafa's back. Vitriol. The first shot fired from Rafa's fully loaded magazine deals bonus corrosive damage. Pain Reaction. Rafa's weapons gain a chance to ricochet off enemies with status effects. Ricochet damage is based off the damage dealt. Lightning Rod. While aiming with the gun, Rafa deals bonus shock damage. Each time Rafa hits an enemy this way, deal increased bonus damage until he zooms out. El Electron. Enemies damaged by Rafa's Peacebreaker cannons have increased status effect chance. For the second capstone, we have Beam Team. Rafa's Peacebreaker cannon's weapons are replaced with a shock beam and a corrosive beam. Each beam automatically locks onto enemies in your view, and may lock onto different enemies. Whenever Rafa applies a status effect, gain increased action skill damage. Inspirato. Whenever Rafa inflicts a status effect on an enemy, gain increased action skill cooldown rate and improved action skill duration rate. This effect stacks. Moving into the right branch, we have Barrage. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased splash damage while Overdrive is active. For the fifth and final augment, we have Unmissable Missiles. Pressing up while Peacebreaker cannons is active causes them to fire a volley of homing rockets at the enemy in view, at the cost of the action skill duration. Everdrive. Overdrive gains increased duration. Devil May Care. Overdrive skill. While Overdrive is active, Rafa gains increased movement speed and gains health regeneration. While Overdrive is not active, Rafa takes increased damage and gains increased action skill cooldown rate. Temerario. Overdrive skill, Rafa gains increased gun damage, but decreased weapon handling. This bonus is based on how long Overdrive has been active. Soldado. Kill skill, double all Overdrive bonuses. And for the third and final capstone, we have Volatile Hollow Points. Rafa's Peacebreaker cannons weapons are replaced with rockets that deal splash damage. Whew, that was a lot to read off, and I would have loved to go into detail for every single skill and give my thoughts on it and stuff. But this video is already long enough, and I want to keep it straight to the point for you guys. Anyways, let me know below in the comments what you guys think about Rafa. Will he be your first choice for a character, or will you play him later on? But yeah, I would like to know your thoughts. Anyways, thank you all for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in the next video. Peace out.